Good evening. I have to say it's delightful as an Englishman to actually be standing in the country of the World Football Championships. I had that honour for 4 years of my life when I was much younger, over 50 years ago, and I don't expect to get it again, to be perfectly honest. I've just discovered that my slides haven't arrived, so that's fine. I'm sure I know them, and the best part is if I don't know them, you won't know that I don't know them. I'm going to talk to you today about something that is actually really very powerful, something that I think many of you know about, but you may not know enough about, in my opinion. It's something that is generally characterized in numbers, but actually it is a very human story. It is also something that is very life-changing. This is, as you probably guessed from the introduction, migrant remittances. And although my topic is really called It's More Than Just Numbers, I do want to use numbers to try and illustrate some of the points that I'm going to make. So the first number I want to give you, which some of you will know, is 232 million. 232 million, it's 232 million people. That is the number of migrants that there are in the world. And if migration were a nation, if you'll pardon the alliteration, it would actually be the 5th largest country by population in the world. Bigger than Brazil, slightly less than Indonesia. I think what's really important to understand about these migrants is actually, and probably surprisingly based on what we see, is actually that there are more migrants who move from a developing country to another developing country than there are who move from a developing country to a developed country. Although typically what we see in the media would portray a massive flow to the industrial north. The other thing I think that it's worth knowing about these migrants is that over 90% of them travel for economic reasons. They move to make an improvement not just to their own lives, but to the lives of their families, quite often their communities, and also to their country as a whole. So we've got a big group of very disparate people. The next number I want to give you is 404 billion. That's $404 billion is the official, and I'll come back to that in a minute, the official size of remittances to developing countries for last year, 2013. To put that into some sort of context, ODA, or Overseas Development Assistance, by all the countries in the world, roughly, last year was approximately $135 billion. So migrants are sending home 3 times all the international aid to try and help improve their family, their country, their community. The next number I want to give you, and this is something we work very closely on, is 7.9%. 7.9% represents the typical cost to send $200 US, and these transactions we're talking about are in that sort of range, $200 to $500. 7.9% on average is what it costs these people to send money home. So to put that in other terms, last year there was about $32 billion spent just being able to move money from A to B, which is a phenomenal amount of money. It's about a quarter of the level of global international aid. So the good news, I suppose, if there is some, is that the global community woke up to the amount of money that is being consumed by people who are sending money to transfer at home, to the expensive cost of it, and has been working since 2009 to try and reduce this cost. Over that time period, the price has come down from 10.1% to 7.9%. The problem is it was supposed to come down to 5% by the end of this year. So The good news is that this year there'll be $8 billion less spent on remittance charges than there was, but the challenge is we've still got a lot to do in that area. And I'll explain some of the things that can be done in a minute. I want to bring this more to my area of special interest, which is Sub-Saharan Africa. If we look there is something around about 30 million people that it's estimated have moved from one country to another. Many of these, of course, have gone cross-border within Africa, but a number have moved out of there. What's interesting when you look at Africa is, or Sub-Saharan Africa, the World Bank estimates there's $32 billion sent in international remittances back to the whole of Sub-Saharan Africa, a region of just under 1 billion people. It gets a bit more weird when the data shows us that Nigeria accounts for 2/3 of that. $22 billion goes to Nigeria. The problem we have is nobody really knows how much is going. But if those are the official numbers, we can be sure that there's probably double that amount that's moving cross borders or into Africa from other places. But the big challenge there is that actually it costs 11.3% to send your money back to Africa or intra-Africa, which is probably the region that needs the lowest prices, but actually it has the highest prices in the world to send money into. And even more alarmingly, if you want to transfer money intra-Africa, between South Africa and Mozambique, say, the cost is over 20%. So it's mad, isn't it? And that's the reason why so much money goes informally, and that's the reason why we need to look at how do we solve this problem. There are a number of solutions. Christina outlined some. I've given you the problem, so hopefully by the end of tonight we can come up with the solution. But actually there are some things. Some are quite easy, like bringing more transparency. People just don't know how much it's actually costing them to transfer money. And in many countries that's not legal. Changing the regulatory environment. In many countries we're only actually allowed to transfer money through banks or collect money at banks. But it's the world of technology actually that can really make a massive difference. Assuming we can get over the regulatory hurdles, there are good examples. I'm sure we're all familiar with M-Pesa in Kenya, but mobile payments has the real potential to make a difference on the collecting end of these remittances. On the other hand, you've got, on the sending end, the use of the internet should make it much easier. We have really silly cases where migrants in sending countries have a bank account, but they can't send money through their bank because the bank doesn't offer that service. So they get paid into their bank account, they go to an ATM, collect their cash, walk over to an agent, pay them the cash. The agent then transfers the money by putting it into a system, takes the cash back to the bank. That bank then transfers the money to the money transfer company. The money transfer company then passes it back or onto the paying out side, and the process gets repeated. And then what happens? Well, the person who the money has been sent to actually doesn't have a bank account, but the only place they can go is to a bank to collect money. So they walk or get a bus or whatever for hours to collect their money. They've been sent their $200 in local currency. If you go to somewhere like Nigeria, you have to collect the money all in cash. I don't know how many of you have been to Nigeria and seen how much room, say, $500 in Naira takes up, but it's probably a bag like that. So you do actually get a bag that you take out and you go back home. And then what do you do with it? You probably give some to some people that you've borrowed money from, you use it for your everyday expenses, and then you stick it under your mattress. And that's not necessarily the most secure place to be. So this is one of the really powerful drivers that remittances can deliver, is it can really help with financial inclusion and financial literacy. Why not, when somebody comes to collect their money, have somebody in that branch educating them about what alternatives they have? Why not use technology to give them the variety of banking products that they could easily access? From what we've read or heard, there's about 2.5 billion people in this world who don't have a bank account. Bank accounts and access to finance is seen as one of the major global development drives now. Remittances can play a part. It won't solve it, but it can play a part. There's recent research showing that somebody who receives remittances is 10% more likely to have a bank account than somebody else. So I think we have to use the weight of remittances to help us in that space. And this is all about personal so far, but at a country level, there are other things that can be done as well. And there are examples of securitizing flows of remittances and some quite clever financial details that can really help. So far, I've just talked about remittances, and if you think about it, a remittance is just moving money from here to there. But the other thing that's connected with the migrants that I really want to bring to your attention is that, and coming back to numbers, $500 billion is the estimated amount of savings that migrants have held in developed countries. At the moment, if they're in formal savings plans or systems, they will be earning a miserly rate of interest. But these are people generally who have a real interest in development in the countries they've come from. So there are some real initiatives now to try and encourage migrants to invest in the countries that they've come from, to help them really grow. And although not directly related to remittances, they do then become remittances for a purpose and for an investment. And we really see that this has an opportunity to take off. So, apologies for not having any slides. I hope I've got my numbers right. But I just want to conclude with saying that this whole area is a mass of opportunities, really. And I also want to encourage you that, and I'm sure many of you do this anyway, because I think there's such an international audience here. But when you see a migrant, just remember that they've probably put themselves through a great deal of personal sacrifice to be where they are, so they can earn money to send back home to improve the lives of their families, their communities and their countries. But we shouldn't forget they're actually helping the development and the economies of the countries they've moved to through undertaking jobs that often are hard to fill with locals, or through paying taxes, or just through their consumption. So to me, actually, remittances is one of the best forms of development out there, because it's people taking personal responsibility for developing their lives, their loved ones, and their countries. And hopefully next time you see a migrant, you'll think about that a bit more. Thank you.